It's rather incredible to think that 2,500 years, more or less, ago, the ancient Greeks built this phenomenal place that we now know as the Acropolis. And they produced architecture that we're still emulating and reconstructing. And they produced a philosophy, you know, the whole philosophy around democracy. Socrates, Aristotle, there's so much that came out of Greece. But perhaps what we forgot most is their deep, deep rootedness and connection to the ocean, the air, the sun, worship of these things, the earth. It's time that we really refocused on that philosophy, just as our indigenous brothers and sisters in places like the Amazon and so many places. They haven't forgotten that. Somehow we've moved beyond it. Time to get back into that now. Thanks. Walking through this ancient city of Delos, this island off the coast of Greece. It's so interesting to think about how human beings have seemed to constantly move from the spiritual, like this temple here that was built on an island that worshipped the feminine, and also then turned to the masculine, where Apollo was said to have been born, and that transformed from an island that was so deeply spiritual to one that became sort of almost like the banking and commercial center of the Greek states, and where the money was kept that financed the Acropolis in Athens, and now these huge cruise ships that you can see back there, yachts. Well, the big cruise ships don't come here. They pull into Mykonos, and from there these smaller ferries bring people here, but also private yachts. You know, it's just a fascinating thing to think about, of how we humans constantly seem to be evolving from the spiritual to the material, and then maybe back to the spiritual and then the material. And right now we seem to be going through that type of thing where we come from extreme materialism, extreme emphasis on maximization of profits and materialistic consumption, to the beginning of a new belief that we have to change, that we have to move more to the spiritual, to the worship of the earth, the understanding that we are a part of nature, we are part of these rocks. Not with this emphasis on the big luxury yachts and materialism. We seem to be going through one of those phases once again. Let's hope so. Let's hope that we're moving more into the spiritual, and that we can pull ourselves out of this horrible death economy that we've created, that's consuming and polluting itself into extinction, and can move into the life economy and an ecological civilization that values the spiritual, that values, that recognizes that we are a part of, not apart from nature. That's where we gotta go if we're to survive in a world any of us would recognize. Yes, Delos, the teachings of the ancient world about what it is to be living in the modern world. Here on this ancient Greek island of Crete, in the background perhaps you can hear the military jets. Modern warfare. Behind us is an example of ancient warfare, but this island also has this mythology around the Labyrinth, and the Greek half bull, half man, the centaur, was in the middle of that labyrinth, and nobody could find their way out. The centaur killed them until Theseus came along, and he was able to make his way through the labyrinth by tying strings and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of different mythology around that, but I think the important thing is that we're at a time now again where we need to find our way out of the labyrinth. We need to move beyond this idea of warfare. Down below you can see a modern warship, part of a NATO fleet. those jets. I can't quite see them, but you can hear them. We need to make our way out of this idea of warfare. We need to find our way out of the labyrinth of imperialism, of domination, of the death economy that we find ourselves in. We're being destroyed by half man, half bull, by nature that's reacting against us, the human beings. I think the Minotaur is a great symbol of man and nature coming together, and they can either dominate and kill us, or we can find our way out of that labyrinth. We can move beyond the system that we've created that's destroying us and into what we can call an ecological civilization. We can move ourselves beyond warfare, beyond the death economy, into a life economy. This is the time to do it. This is the time to see our way out of the labyrinth. This is the NATO military base on the island of Crete, one of the Greek Isles. And I'm just going by now in this ship. And it just reminds me of how the Romans talked about, they had an organization called Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which was really like NATO today. It was the Roman Empire, but they brought these other countries together in the name of peace. And in a way, I think NATO is part of this American imperialistic move. It's really controlled by the United States, but we like to say that it's all these other countries that come together, and they do. But we call the shots in the United States, we, the United States. These are some great examples of how this island of Zakynthos has incorporated all this Venetian architecture. You might almost think you're in Venice, parts of it. The only difference is this is all brand new. This whole city, this whole area was destroyed in the early 50s by that earthquake, and then a horrible fire, and many people killed, but they rebuilt it. They did this magnificent job of rebuilding it, and rebuilding it in this style of Venice. Pretty amazing. When you think about the amazing ability that human beings have to recover. Hopefully, we can apply this ability to recover from all the destruction we've brought to the world in recent years. There's the city of Corfu. You got the old fortress on the left and the new fortress on the right, which isn't all that new, incidentally. It's again the old story of, warfare, fortresses. Why are we all so intrigued by war? Because it's our history. It's a history that needs to change. Time to change it. Time to move beyond all that and these huge cruise ships. Huge cruise ships. Packed in here. Amazing cruise ships. Packed in here. Just did a whole circle around. Back to the fortresses. Behind me, the small, spectacular city of Kotor, Montenegro, is just waking up early in the morning on this mid-October day. It's so beautiful and peaceful here. And yet I also know that this is a challenge point, a point of competition between the countries aligned with the United States and NATO, in competition for the economy of this country with China. And here we are at a time in our history when the United States is bogged down with wars in Israel and Ukraine and conflicts all over the world, and our own Congress is bogged down. I can't seem to agree on anything, including the really important issues of climate change. But a sleepy little town like this reminds you that it's a really beautiful beautiful world. And we should all honor this and look at what really are the important things in life. Yes, the important things in life, like this beautiful little city. Interesting to note that here in Kotor in Montenegro, you've got these mountains that are very, very dry. You've got towns that are in extremely dry areas, and then you've got a place over here that receives some of the most heavy rainfall year-round in Europe. Microclimates, you know, it's amazing. And this is just an incredibly beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bay here in Montenegro. Nature in all its glory, with heavy rainfall, and then another place right next to it with lots and lots of sunshine. Behind me, the famous or infamous Bridge of Sighs and the famous gondolas of Venice. The Bridge of Sighs was built to connect the Doge's palace, in which I'm standing, the Doge being the person in charge of the city of Venice, or the city-state of Venice. His palace, which had the Inquisition, the interrogation rooms here in this palace, and then prisoners, once they were convicted, had to cross that bridge to this prison on the other side. Formidable prison. And so it was called the Bridge of Sighs because as they looked through those windows, they sighed, knowing it might be their last view ever of the world outside, of Venice and of all the world outside. And now these beautiful gondolas and people, lovers from all over the world, travel through here and travel under this Bridge of Sighs. Oh boy. I think now of how we all are sighing a bit with what's happening to our world and how it's time to let that sigh out in a positive way that takes us away from this tragic trajectory of history, of domination, of exploitation, and now of trying to dominate the earth, and the earth speaking back to us and say, you can't dominate me. You're just like so many fleas, and if you get to be too much of a nuisance, I'll just shake you all off. The earth is twitching. Pachamama is twitching. She's warning us. It's time for us to let out that sigh and realize that we've got to change. One of the ways Venice deals with climate change is during high tide, it opens up these little circular things to let water into the city. Instead of flooding, it's done naturally, sort of naturally. This is St. Mark's Square, you know, St. Mark's Plaza. This is an amazing place, and people are having to walk on these wooden bridges that they put in walkways during high tide. It's an incredible demonstration of what climate change is doing to this remarkable old historic city. Incredible. So we end this journey where we began it, at St. Mark's, this incredible square, this incredible cathedral, St. Mark's in Venice. And we've taken this journey through the Greek Isles, from Athens back to Venice. And what have we learned? I suppose we've learned that the human species creates amazing works of art, amazing civilizations, but it does so often at the expense of terrible adventures of plundering and raping and pillaging and stealing from other people. And modern history has been that. As an economic hitman, that's what I did. Didn't bring back gold and incredible sculptures like these horses that were built around 200 and stolen from someplace else and brought here. I didn't steal those kinds of things, but I put countries deep into debt so I could steal their resources and to dictate many of their policies, their economic policies and their political policies also. That's what my job was about. We continue to do this. The difference today is that we've also created a totally global death economy that's consuming and polluting itself into ultimate destruction. Climate change, income inequality, terrible suffering that is caused as a result of this death economy. So there's a great story here and a great lesson to be learned from our own history, from our past history, our current history, from these times that we're living in now. Let's believe that we can build a better society, that we can stop putting religious figures and spiritual leaders like Christ on the cross and then taking them down and creating these phenomenal stories about rejuvenation and Christ coming back to life. Can that not be a story about our own rejuvenation as a species? Our determination, our potential for transforming the death economy into a life economy, for creating a global ecological civilization. I think that's what we learned from history, that we can and we must do that. Now is our time. Thank you.